Memory is very weird because when years starts passing by, memories tend to crystallize themselves into a very simple kind of emotions. Sometimes we forget that probably those experiences in the moment that were experienced were also more nuanced. Trauma is very it's helpful because then you can realize that actually memory is a plastic, malleable thing. You can transform it into different things and ultimately set it free.
My name is Elisa. If you've never met me, my name is Elisa, and welcome back to Sunday Morning Juice. Today, I am joined by Eduardo Braun Costa, the writer, director, and co-producer for the short film Los Mentirosos, which just won the Jury Prize Award for acting at Sundance. Congratulations.
Thank you, Alisa. It's great to be here talking with you.
Yeah, you too. This is the last year that Sundance is at Park City, right?
Yeah, that's it. But it's my first time here, so I guess it's my first and last in Park City. I love Sundance. Don't take me wrong. I love Sundance. It was great, but I come from a very hot country, Argentina. So for me, it is cold. It can be a little bit unsettling, if you know what I mean.
No, I definitely know what you mean. I spent a lot of time in like Texas. So, Los Mentirosos is about two young boys thrown into adulthood. Matthias and Jamie, they're trying to make sense of the world, and when Jamie is caught by mall security, Matthias must convince a stranger to pretend to be their father to get him released. The synopsis mentions that this story is inspired by your own childhood. Was there a specific lie you remember telling that inspired the story?
Interesting. Let's say that it's not really a specific lie, but I grew up in a family with a lot of brothers and maybe absent fathers, absent parents, let's say. So, like, I learned how to survive using whatever I had at hand. So, lying was probably something like me and my brothers used to do a lot. Not just mean lying, just like getting along with life. When you're too independent too soon, you're a kid in an adult world, so you need to survive. And I think telling stories and lying was a great way to do it, actually. And it was probably the way I accessed fiction. um, and I love that about fiction when it's part of life. And I think we are all making characters of ourselves, making stories of ourselves, trying to make an identity work for us. And so fiction is always part of how we live life. And I think when you're a kid, you start understanding this and you play with it.
Yeah. So it was like sort of like you were just kind of
Yeah.
experimenting.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly. But I think that's how we deal with life and others and the image we have of ourselves and the image we project into others. So it's like life and identity is a fiction in itself. And in a way, everything is a little bit a lie and a little bit a truth. So I wanted this small little story to be a reflection about that and how we are pulled into the language, let's say, of life, and how we have to, as the little animals that we are, deal into making our fear and desires fit into this kind of language and this narrative of life and these identities. And I think when we do that, there's always something that spills over, and something that never quite fits. And especially with sexuality, I think the film has an idea on this being born into this very sexual life that we live, but then we need to make that fit also into a language and ideas about it. And there's always pain in it, I think, and there's always sacrifice in it.
I like that you brought that up because I feel like now more than ever, people like little kids have access to how sexual this world can be. It really even took me back a little bit when I was like looking at the boys looking at the teens make out with people and kind of be like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be here. But also, like, what is this? What's happening? Like, they don't really have the resources to learn about those things. Like, that's not really something that he could ask his mom. You know,
Yeah,
she was busy, but like also it's like how do you even ask your mom something like that when you don't know what you're seeing?
yeah, yeah. I remember very well that moment when you start like having a sense of how sexuality is around everywhere, but you don't really still have the tools to make sense out of it. So you just feel like the something is going on. You feel some kind of attraction, magnetism for something, but you still don't really understand what's going on. You know, when the first time you saw, I don't know, like teens having like kissing or these kind of sexual expressions in the streets or in the school, and you knew there was something about that that interested you, that appealed to you as a being, but you quite didn't understand what was going on. And I think that's something that inspires a lot of stories, but also of trauma and wounds and grief and pain. And what does this kid is actually listening, and what is he understanding, and what is he feeling about it? Probably they're all different things, and that's an interesting tension and conflict to think about, and how that can trigger something, some kind of grief about understanding or seeing a face of your mother that you haven't seen before, and how that can feel a little bit strange, and how that moment talks about an overwhelming presence of a mother and maybe the absence of a father, and how that has a consequence on the story, and how that conjures in a way this other character that we see uh, later in the film, and how also this pushes the story forward in a way. And I hope that moment and all these ideas keep on being present under the rest of the story, you know, like making some kind of resonance.
There's this saying that we lose our childhood like the moment that we realize adults don't really know what they're doing. Do you feel like in the film there's a tragedy about the loss of innocence that comes from misadventure, maybe?
Yeah, yeah, I like what you're saying, because like I thought about the logic behind all the characters. Like, okay, so the kids will have a lot of things going on inside, a lot of depth, but not the adults. The adults will be somehow will feel like they don't know that they're doing, and they're just overwhelmed by not understanding anything of what's going on, while the kids, at least that's was what was trying to, you feel like they are always finding solutions and finding a way to react, a way to survive, and they feel like they have all this inner universe in a way. And the adults, you just you just feel like they're like just doing what they can, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. There was definitely a big sense of like every time the kids interacted with adults, it was like anger or something they were met with, you know, with their
Yeah,
mom, or when they brought the pretend dad to meet the mall
yeah,
security and then there was a big fight. It's like the kids, they really only had themselves in the end to figure it out.
yeah. They end up finding some kind of warmth and security inside a theater. It's the only moment that you feel they can relax, at least for those 10 seconds, until that final gesture that the kid does. That for me is like somehow a signal that he's also like being an over adapted kid has a lot of benefits, but also like consequences. It's like you cannot be a kid anymore. You cannot really relax somehow. Like you can have this kind of moment, but then you have to keep surviving. You know.
And that's even what we were met with at the very end, too. um, Filippo and Noah are so magnetic. Their characters felt so lived in. The chemistry was really great. How was the casting process?
Like I knew this film would only work if the kids were could carry the emotional depth of the film and the story. So with my producer, we took the decision that only start pre-production after finding the kids. So I could just take my time. Actually, I looked for them for a year and a half, maybe. It's not that it was very active, but I would go to theater classes for kids, maybe one every month. Not only to look for the kids, but also to start like soaking, like entering the emotional space of kids and observing them and trying to connect with the way they deal with emotions, with their contradictions, and how they try to express themselves. The casting process is not only about you having an idea of what you want and trying to find that, but it's also nurturing yourself from the process. And maybe you see this kid that doesn't really work, but it has something that you can just take note, say, okay, this kid has something that I didn't saw before or I didn't thought before, but I really like that. So you start also creating the character and what you want from the very process. I wanted to find a kid that I felt I wanted to know more of. When I met Noah, I immediately knew that he was it. I mean, then just I went through like doing some extra tests just to be sure. But the first time I met him, I knew like this kid interests me a lot. I can see that there is a lot of things going on behind his eyes, you know, like inside himself. He is very shy, but you can just tell that he's a very smart kid, that he knows what's going on around him, that he knows how to react to different situations to get different results. So he's like this, he has this kind of, he's like an over adapted kid that knows how to manipulate the world around him. And I think being a kid is a lot about that, especially at that age where, or every age actually, like kids are not innocent, simple creatures. They're very complex. They have the same feelings that we have. And they're just trying to get specific results out of things. And I like that about kids. Actually, that's what I like about them, and that's what I was looking for. I was looking for a complex kid that could embody this kind of contradiction and not like a simple naive way of looking into childhood.
So, with that being said, did you have to have any like difficult conversations with them about why their characters did what they did, or do you feel like they really just understood?
No, I didn't have that kind of conversations. I did have conversations about their lives and like, have you ever fallen in love, or what have you been dreaming of? Do you remember what you dreamt yesterday? Just different ways of access personal and distant world that they live in, at least for us. And but I try not to explain a lot. Actually, what I did do was write and think about the scenes throughout the story as games. You know, I didn't put scenes in there that felt over logical or that need to be really understood. They were more about games, you know, just you need to steal candies and you have to go unnoticed while stealing them, or you have to spy on your mother and you have to walk very silently, or you have to fight with your brother over the remote control. And you have to stop people in the street, strangers, to ask them to buy you some cinema tickets. So all the dynamic of the scenes were like games, and I think that was important to let them feel like they're playing. And I think that's actually a useful idea for any kind of scene, not only children. Like, I've been doing theater for almost 10 years now, and there are scenes where you just can feel vitality in, because they have this kind of play with it. You can turn it into something plastic, and it gives freedom to the actor, and they can actually enjoy it and have fun doing it. And there are scenes that can be great, but maybe they are a little bit too stiff. They have only one direction, you know. So yeah, I tried like to keep that in mind while writing it and while thinking about this film.
You mentioned that Sundance feels like the best possible home for this film. What does it mean to you personally to have your Argentine coming of age story play to a Utah audience?
You know, coming from a very different country, you create this story, this universe, these characters, this whole film, and then you're able to show it to people from very different backgrounds. Not only people from the States, but here you have people from all over the world, and see how they react. And it's a reminder of what cinema and stories, I think, are all about, and how stories can tap into something universal. And I think that's the power of cinema, and that's why we do what we do, just to bring us together, you know, around a campfire and just feel less alone, and share something that might be painful, and share something very intimate, and how that can resonate with people that at first glance seems so different. And that's a very beautiful feeling, actually.
Have you had any unexpected responses to the film?
I've I've gotten like a lot of thank you, and I didn't expect that. I tried this story and the film to feel uplifting in a way. I know like the core of it is a dramatic core. It has this kind of painful core, and I think the whole idea was to make, you know, kids have this way of dealing with pain and grief, that is, they just cover it with play and games and adventure, and I tried the film to feel that way. I didn't expect people to come and say like thank you. You transported to my own childhood. You helped me see my own still painful memories, and how they can be remembered with a little bit more of compassion and even comedy in it. You know, I think memory is very weird, because when years starts passing by, memories tend to crystallize themselves into a very simple kind of emotions. And sometimes we forget that probably those experiences in the moment that were experienced were also more nuanced. Then you can realize that actually memory is a plastic, malleable thing you can play with, and you can transform it into different things, and ultimately set it free, you know, and turn it into something else.
Yeah. You come from a heavy background in music videos, winning a Latin Grammy and a Cannes Young Director Award. What was the hardest habit to break, switching from that type of storytelling to your first narrative short?
I think the process of making fiction is longer, so you have to be very patient, and I think that was a big part of it. Just accepting that the process is gonna be very long, and also like realizing that this was a big exercise for me, in where I wanted to tap into fiction the way you cannot really tap into music videos. At least that's my experience, and it's music videos are all about images, and I think fiction it's like image is just a very small part of it. A short film needs to be very personal. That's and that's different. You need like to expose yourself. You need to really like open new parts of yourself.
Do you want to move into more fiction, storytelling, narrative cinema? Is that a lane that you want to keep moving forward in?
Yes, definitely. Of course, it's very hard. But yeah, that's what I think we are all doing here at Sundance, just trying to keep on pushing for the next project and hopefully pay the rent in the process
Yeah.
as well, you know?
Yeah, well, that actually leads perfectly into my next question. As artists, there is work that we do to pay the rent, and then there's work that we do to feed our soul. For the people who are in that era of life where maybe their passions can't really pay their rent yet, how can they balance the pressure of survival with the patience that art requires?
I think survival is much more important than anything, so keep surviving. And also, um, like cinema itself, it means nothing. I mean, it's just a medium, and ultimately it's an excuse to experience life more intensely. So I think the richness of life is actually much more present outside cinema. It's in your other job, in the job you hate. Probably there's things there that have much more richness and potence uh, in terms of where stories can come from and what cinema actually nurtures from. So I would say actually there's an opportunity there because you can just take water from one bucket and pour it into the other, you know. But I really connect with the anxiety and the fear that comes from that. And I actually I will I fight and I strive like to understand how to balance that, and I will keep on striving. And it's not very simple and it's not very clear, but I do know that cinema is only an excuse. It's only a medium, and if you what really means and the meaningful part of the cinema is what it's inside, you know, and that's just life. At least that's an advice I give to myself. Like, don't think too much about it. Just do the next one. Keep on going. It's not about doing one that's perfect. Maybe it's more about making what you like to do while you can, you know.
Yeah. You said something, you said finding the beauty in the things that you hate. There's a lot of substance there. I think that that is so awesome. I think that's a way for me to kind of reframe my mindset a little bit more. I think, like me and people that are watching for sure, we kind of get stuck thinking that if we didn't have to do the things we didn't like, life would be easier. And that's not true. You're just going to have other problems.
Yes, yes. That's the thing about life. It always manages like to bring new problems and new challenges. These last couple of weeks, I had the luck to meet, I don't know, directors, producers that seem to be in a very different position. Uh, and you actually talk with them and you realize that like, the problems just keep finding new ways, new forms to appear, but essentially they're the same problems. So you
Yeah.
just cope with it, learn from it, and hopefully the problem will appear in a different way next time, and at least you will change the way it appears so you can learn something different. But yeah.
Yeah. Eduardo, thank you so much. This has been awesome. You dropped so many gems. Congratulations for your win. I hope you have an amazing rest of Sundance. Where can the people find out more about the film and about you?
I'm not very active on social media, but my Instagram is ed.braun, like my name. But thanks a
Well,
lot, Alice. It was great talking with you. I loved the interview. I loved the talk, and great meeting you.
you
Thanks.
too. My pleasure.
I think of it on my boyfriend and you know, damage.